a video on something I want to have faff around with. I think I can turn cheap tomato soup into a fish soup relatively easily. And I want to have a go because I think it's doable. So I have made proper fish soup in the past, and it's a hell of a job. And I've made it for soup, and I've also made it for like a sauce. It's a lot of work, but I think we can cut a few corners and make it out of that. I've also bought some Baxter's lobster bisque as well to do a little bit of a taste comparison. So let's have a. It's like almost like it was like £4 was that. I thought, God, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And I don't really want to say if it's good or not until we've kind of tasted it. So I'm curious about that. But what I thought we'll do with this, I'm just an avid recycler. I don't like the ideas of things going into landfill if we can avoid it. So it's just easier to take the paper off. So I don't know what this lobster biscuit is like. We'll give it a try, but for £4 it should be pretty spectacular in my opinion. But I can see why it's £4 because there'll be a lot of working ingredients that go into it. It's not a lot of soup, is there really? So, fish soups, tomato in them, vegetables in them, and then fish essentially. Maybe a few herbs and spices, maybe a little bit of Pernod, a little bit of fennel in with the vegetables, but essentially not that dissimilar from a tomato soup with some fish in it. So hence why I think we can doctor up this cheap tomato soup. I can't remember how cheap it was, but I think we can put some fish in that, see how it tastes. So let's taste it cold. So this is lobster bisque. It's alright. It's alright. Got a bit of a kick to that. It's got a bit of cayenne and pepper in that. So that was lobster bisque. So we'll just remind that in there. It's got some cream in it. You can taste that. And then cheap tomato soup. How does that taste? Like a cheap tomato soup. So we have these. So a salmon paste and a sardine and tomato paste. I think this will add a nice bit of fishiness to the soup. So let's get these soups on. Yes, the clicker is not working today. So let's get these on and heating up. We'll need to season them, of course, but I think this sardine and tomato will be a nice basis for this. Well, that's not good, is it? So let's estimate a teaspoon worth of that in there. So we'll give it a taste first. But it's basically like a fish puree with a bit of tomato in, which kind of think, well, if we're putting lots of different types of fish into a fish soup, then we strain it through a sieve and you get that minced up kind of fish thing going on. So that's essentially what that is. We're essentially adding some minced up fish, which is what we would do anyway. So we would make a base of the soup, add some fish into it, puree it down, pass it through a sieve, and then essentially that's what we'd be doing. We'd be mincing some fish into a fish soup. So that in there like that, and then so we'll get that up to temperature. Add the right amount of fishiness to it. We might add a little bit more milk, and then keep costs down because I am only faffing around. And I don't want to spend an absolute fortune. For the fishy part of the stuff that we're going to put in the soup, I bought some cheap frozen pollock from the supermarket. Pollock's a member of the cod family, I believe. It's quite nice, is this? It's alright. I've had it deep fried in the past, and it passed the test. Now there is a water jacket on the fish when it becomes frozen. So the water jacket wants to melt it off, so it turns to this ice jacket here. Well, it's not water jacket, the ice jacket. But it tastes a little bit fishy. So that might as well go in. I don't want to put a fish stock in because I think fish stocks are a little bit too strong flavoured, fishy, a little bit too fishy. So I don't want to put those in, but that liquid and that paste and then a little bit of milk just to let it down, I think, like that. And then obviously, so that will cook that up. When this is up to temperature, we will cut that up and we'll just drop it in and slowly cook it into the soup. See, it's already changing colour. A little bit less tomatoey, a little bit more creamy. Like that. Hopefully it won't split. And then seafood sticks, because I was kind of thinking if I was to do I think I need another whisk. Let's get one. If I was to make a proper fish soup, you'd put things like prawns or langoustines or scallops in it or something like that. But seafood sticks will do the job. Many people would look down their nose at them, but I kind of think they're rather delicious. So, how's that taste? It needs more fish in it. It needs more of that in it to kind of just get rid of that extremely tomato flavour. Like that. I think that'd be better. Right, I'll go and get another whisk and we'll carry on heating these up. Right, so I've just put a little bit more fish paste, sardine and tomato paste in there. It's thickening it up, so we'll be able to get away with putting some more milk in. We're certainly going to need some salt in that. A little bit more milk, just to let it down, because we're adding a paste, it's like a thickening agent, because we're adding bulk to it, so it thickens it up. So we can get away with a little bit more milk like that. It's starting to look more like that kind of colour. That can get turned down, and then that is turned down as far as it will go. Right, so I'll chop up some fish, and then I've got nothing to waffle about while I'm chopping up some fish. But I think what we will do as well, I think we will add some bits of fish to the bisque as well, and then it will kind of like, we can improve that as well, can't we? So it's a bit of a 2 for 1. You can improve your fish bisque or your lobster bisque or your seafood bisque or whatever, and with a bit of extra fish, and then pretend that you've made it. Or you can make something a little bit more from scratch. How does this taste so far? It's alright with that. Needs a bit more salt. And like, by the time we finished, that's probably going to be the same price as that. But I think it'll be a little bit more spectacular. Right, pause, I think. Right, they're both up to temperature and I've turned them off. Let's taste lobster bisque, now it's hot. Need some salt in that. How's this taste? That's pretty good, is that? That's pretty good, is that? I think so. I suffer from these things in life where what I imagine something's going to taste like and what it actually tastes like is sometimes a little bit disappointing. So we're kind of thinking, are we aiming for what it tastes, we imagine it tastes like in our head, as opposed to how it tastes in real life? That's a little bit disappointing, but let's put some salt in it. That should taste better than that for £4. They really should know how to season the soup if they're going to charge £4. Yeah, it's only need some salt in that. It's not as nice now it's warmed up. Anyway, so I have shredded the seafood sticks. I kind of thought that would be more interesting. I cubed those up, but I shredded them afterwards. So half the fish in here. There should be enough warmth in the soup to cook the fish. It'll just take a couple of minutes. I suppose I would have liked the whole fillet into one soup, but it'll be fine. So time, it doesn't need the temperature on. It doesn't need the heat on. There'll be sufficient temperature in that soup to cook that fish. gently, which is kind of what we want. So we'll let those cook gently, and then we'll be back. Right, let's do a taste test. So this is not a cost-saving exercise. This is an exercise of how to turn something into something else and make it a little bit more special. And I suppose what I'm going to say something without incriminating myself. A lot of the functions I do are, that sounds really bad. A lot of the functions I do, we're always on a budget. It's always the best food we can provide for the price that we can charge. So it's always a stretch sometimes because people, you want to give people extreme value for money. So if I was ever to do something a little bit more special and someone kind of said, let's have a fish soup, I'd be able to give them a fish soup by cutting out the majority of the work. By making a proper fish soup, I could doctor something into tasting something like, and put a lot of fish in it, and people would be suitably impressed. And I wouldn't have the 2-day process of making and the inconvenience of making a proper fish soup. We could make something not particularly on the cheap, but we could cut the cost down by alleviating a lot of the work out of it. I don't know if that's the right word. I wouldn't use crab sticks if I was doing it for a function. I would throw in some, what fish would I use? Whatever I could get my hands on. But pollock and maybe some, depending on what the budget was, but certainly pollock as the white fish because it's the cheapest that you can get. And then I put in some raw prawns as well, and heat those up in the same kind of way, and so I cook it like that, so you can get that kind of flavour. But anyway, how does this taste? So it needs to be a little bit less tomatoey, so you'd be able to tell that was like a tomato soup base if you had a half decent palate on you. I've got a half decent palate. It's not particularly brilliant, but it's all right. But when you get a bit of fish on your spoon, that makes like the little difference. I think shredding up the seafood sticks, I don't know what people think that would, but my seafood sticks are pollock. That's pretty good, is that? That's pretty good, is that? It's not amazing. It's not fancy restaurant, but it is acceptable as a fish soup. And if you had friends around and you served them that, and they were into fish, I'd probably think that was pretty good. So, Baxter's. Just something about that I'm not that keen on. Let's bite with a bit of fish. Let's find a bit of fish. It's nice with a bit of fish. But I don't think that's anything. That's not anything special. Tomatoey fishy soup. That's what that is. But anyway, so that kind of works. I'm using, what would I use? Would I use less tomato in it? Yeah, so if I was to doctor it properly, how would I do it? This video is probably going to be a little bit too long. It's me thinking my way through something. So I think I'd make a, well, there's two ways of doing it. We either make a fresh tomato sauce, well, a tomato sauce from scratch, using tinned or tomatoes or passata or tomato puree, that type of tomato soup. But I would heavily put in, I'd make it so there was lots of, not so much tomato, and more things like onion in it to kind of lessen the tomato kind of flavour. So it wasn't as tomatoey, but still tomato and still got that colour. and then I put some fennel in as well, and then that would kind of cut out a lot of the faffing with the soup. And then I'd use the sardine paste or salmon paste as the minced up fish element of the soup. I'd put in some cream, I'd put in some aniseed liqueur like some Pernod, or I'd actually put some aniseed in when I was cooking it, and then I'd make the soup, heat it up, and then I'd put all the fish in like last minute, and kind of by the time the fish had been in the soup for 3 or 4 minutes, it would have either heated through or cooked through, depending on what kind of fish you use. And then you would, that's how I would make that soup if I was to do a seafood soup for a function. And I think people would, if there was lots of fish in it, people would think they got a tremendous amount of value from it, and they'd think it was wonderful. You'd never fool a really good chef that way, not a chance, or someone who's particularly knowledgeable about food. But that's certainly a way of making a less time-consuming fish soup. It's not like an Italian fish soup. It's not like a French fish soup at all. I'm not kind of saying that at all. It's not a bisque. It's not a bouillabaisse. Bouillabaisse. It's not a bouillabaisse. It's not any of those things. But it's something it's like something like on the cheap. But there we go. I think that's a success, and it has scratched that itch about me pimping up a soup. I think also you could puree down the. I'd look into the cost of the fish puree as opposed to the cost of seafood sticks, because I think you could puree down the seafood sticks and add them to a tomato soup base. I might actually do this, and I'll have some seafood sticks left over, so we can do this. I'll buy some more. I'll do another video on this, and I think we could use like the seafood sticks as the minced up fishy element of the soup. I think that would kind of work, or some cheap frozen prawns. I think that would kind of work as well. But anyway, so a faffing around, relatively a success. I'm quite happy.